Welcome back to the Bob Harden Show. And now here's your host, Bob Harden.
Thanks so much for joining us here on the show. It's brought to you in part by Gulf Shore Playhouse, bringing you professional New York-style theater at its very best. Visit the very robust website. Get season tickets now. Visit gulfshoreplayhouse.org. Right now we have with us Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Dr. Jasser is the founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, former United States Navy Lieutenant Commander. He's the author of a terrific read. I've read it myself. It is absolutely outstanding. A Battle for the Soul of Islam. And he's also got his own broadcast on Blaze. Dr. Jasser, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you again, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jasser. And for our listeners' benefit, tell us about the American Islamic Forum for Democracy.
It's a nonprofit founded in 2003. Our mission is to separate mosque and state, and we believe that that's the only way to protect the U.S. Constitution against the threat of political Islam or Islamism. That's the Islamists believe that the Islamic State is the identity of the nation state they belong to, and that it should then put into place not secular constitutions, but rather Sharia law and the Quran as the Constitution, or what we believe to be God's Scripture. So therefore, they haven't gone through a reformation. They haven't gone through an enlightenment like the West did. And ultimately, our goal is to drive that and stimulate that. And then it led up to 2015. We formed a coalition called the Muslim Reform Movement, which has since been taking off.
Yeah, and I listened to your broadcast on Blaze today, and one of the topics was the movement meeting, the reform movement that you had in Colorado. Now, we hear so little about the success of this movement, so getting together with like-minded people and discuss the issues and possible solutions must have been extremely energizing.
It really was. This was the fourth meeting. We founded in December 2015 a coalition of 15 different organizations that are very diverse. We've maintained their own identity. My organization, the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, is very conservative. It's right of center on some issues, family values, etc. But yet, we believe that we have a singular focus, all of us, on countering political Islam and countering theocratic Islamism, if you will. So since then, we've met in Toronto, and now we just had a full afternoon conference at Aspen. And what was amazing to me is people say, where's the moderate voices? Well, you have Aspen Institute. You just had a national security forum there a month ago in which you saw a lot of national news about comments that many different generals and former Obama administration officials made, etc. And yet our conference was at a Jewish community center in Aspen, was peripheral to the Aspen Institute. And many folks there, we said, where's the Aspen Daily News? Where's the Aspen media? Yeah. And they ignored us. And, hats off to the organizers, Dr. Alan Altman, and many of the leaders in that community there in Aspen. But the Institute itself, we're still working on getting through their front door rather than the back door, sort of as the peripheral act, if you will. And this is why the strategy, when you have petro-Islamic dollars like the Saudis or the Qataris funding places like Brookings and having huge impact on institutes like Aspen, it's going to be very hard for them to ever want to hear from leaders like our Muslim reformers. And it was organized by Rahil Raza out of Toronto, included Dr. Salim Mansour out of the University of Ottawa, included Elham Mania, a Muslim humanist out of Switzerland, and last Tawfiq Hamid, who was a former radical in Egypt that now has been working on modern interpretations of Islam. So just a fantastic panel that we had. And so many people said, gosh, why can't mainstream America hear this panel and see it just down the street at the Aspen Institute? And the answer is the influence of the petro-Islamic dollars and the fact that Muslims are just unfortunately used simply as a checkoff box for an identity politic rather than looking at solutions and strategies for the global affliction of radical Islam.
No, that is so true indeed. And in fact, there was events in New Mexico with a compound of raising kids to be killers, to be terrorists, to be assassins, if you will, raising children in that way. And, of course, all the attention goes to that as opposed to your movement. Any comments on that at all?
You're exactly right on the fact that the attention goes to sort of the more radical, wacky ones. And yet, even with that, the mainstream media ignored the New Mexico compound. When they talked about it, CNN said, just child abuse and starving kids, when in fact they ignored the fact that it was Muslim jihadis and that were planning on shooting up schools. They were training this young 10, 12, 14-year-old kids to shoot up schools. And by the way, the father of the ringleader, Siraj Wahhaj Jr., then Sr. is the lead imam at the Islamic Society of North America. He was vice president. He's a head fundraiser for the Council on American Islamic Relations. He's very involved in the Muslim Alliance of America, was also the character witness for the blind sheikh in 93. And in my book, I have 3 pages in which I talk about how the reason I only spent 2 hours with the Islamic Society of North America when I was on leave with the Navy was that I heard him speak, this guy speak, and I said, this guy is a separationist, he's a seditionist, and is against this country. And I talked about it in my book, and now his son goes on to create this compound as a radical, and the Islamic organizations are tripping over themselves trying to say, don't blame the father for the son, etc. And his father then gives an interview this week on television as a spontaneous press conference saying, well, my kids were just strung out. Well, they were strung out on political Islam. And nobody's talking about it, even though we've warned about the radicalization issue. And at the end of the day, Bob, they're avoiding the connection of the father to this story because it would have a huge impact on the Muslim organizations that claim to speak on behalf of our community.
Right. Well, you narrated, I thought, I think you still find this on YouTube, the Third Jihad, and which really demonstrated the amount of Islamism or Islamic jihad that is really focused in the United States. And apparently, the point that you're making is fairly substantial, and we need to be careful about this. How do we stand now?
Well, I think, on the one hand, we have a president now that is willing to call a spade and has thankfully abandoned the CVE program, which was countering violent extremism. So from the governmental level, at least, we've shifted the needle back a little bit. We've shifted it away in a foreign policy, away from handing Iran billions and maybe helping towards a revolution there, which I think is good policy. But on the other hand, we've stagnated. We've still not seen the development of the commission President Trump said he was going to create on radical Islam. I think the media and academia have not been focusing on the primary groups that are the problems, as I just mentioned to you. And this response to the New Mexico compound is a classic example where the gateway drug for radicalization are these Muslim Brotherhood groups all over the country. And when they have children that end up being profoundly radicalized, nobody wants to identify the gateway drug as the parents and the theology taught at these organizations. And until we do that, unfortunately, you look at the mainstream media this weekend, nobody was talking about the realities of the radical Islamist ideology coming out of that compound and what created it. The grandfather was given a pass, and we're still not paying attention to things like we should. And that third jihad, even though we made it back in 2008, is still completely relevant to the comma of what we said back then, because I still don't think America sees an urgency when it comes to what's discussed in the day-to-day news.
And I think it's important to separate Islamic jihad from the religion of Islam. And I think you'd be the first to say that really the religion of Islam needs to go through a reformation to resolve these internal issues within the religion. But aside from that, politically and in terms of our national security, we need to identify Islamic jihad for what it is. It is an enemy, and we need to contain it and control it and wipe it out.
Exactly. I mean, just like the Cold War. Nobody said in the Cold War, as much as we were fighting the Soviets, that non-violent, non-Soviet communism was a resource for how to defeat the Soviets. Those were the precursors for Soviet adherence and the Soviet imperialism was general communism, whether it's Cuban or Central American or South American communism. It didn't matter. Same thing with political Islam. The precursors of the Brotherhood, of the Khomeinists in Iran, whatever it might be, no matter how non-militant they might claim to be, are the same ideology as the militants. It's just they may disagree on the means of how to get there. And this country, as we try to find a solution to radical Islam, we better employ those Muslims that believe in liberty and freedom, that believe in our country and our flag, that reject the Islamic State of any form, not just ISIS, but any form of an Islamic State. And until we start to have clarity in every interfaith discussion, every academic discussion, we're going to continue this whack-a-mole program of countering each event and wondering, I wonder how this compound, where it came out of nowhere. I wonder how the San Bernardino shooters came out of nowhere. We're like enabling a community that needs a 12-step program.
Absolutely. Again, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, I'm going to refer you to the website, aifdemocracy.org, aifdemocracy.org. That's the website of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Also, terrific read, A Battle for the Soul of Islam. A terrific read. First of all, I want to just acknowledge you, Doctor, for laying bare your own personal beliefs and your practice of Islam, but which I found to be so informative, but also describing in great detail the issues that we'll be talking about today. So again, A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Doctor, I genuinely appreciate your time here on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Anytime. Thanks for all you do, Bob. Appreciate it.
My pleasure indeed.